Ocarina of Time tells a story of a grand adventure, one that's filled with expansive landscapes, epic battles, and puzzling dungeons. But if you look a little closer, you can see a smaller, more personal story. The story of a young boy becoming a man. Link begins his journey as a young Kokiri, bright-eyed and ready for adventure. Then, as time passes, he suddenly finds himself looking like a man, yet unsure if he can lift the responsibilities set before him. He has the body of an adult, but he's only just beginning his journey to becoming a man. To truly embody the essence of manhood, he needs to learn to become responsible for himself, while also relying on others. By examining how he interacts with other characters as a child and looking at what he learns as an adult, we'll be able to explore these subtle yet powerful ways that Ocarina of Time shows Link's transformation from a boy to a man. At the beginning of the game, Link was an outcast among the Kokiri. He was the boy who never got a fairy. Saria was really the only person who you could say was a true friend to Link. The others seemed indifferent or were just outright condescending. This was especially true of Mido, who was the self-proclaimed leader of the Kokiri. He could not believe that the Great Deku Tree would even consider asking to see Link and wouldn't let him pass without a sword and shield. Mido wasn't the only one who would look down on Link throughout his adventure, though. There were countless others who would underestimate him. This seemed to be hard for Link, as he was supposed to be responsible for saving the kingdom, yet he was still being treated like a kid. Even those who would become his friend simply saw him as the child that he was. The Goron who would become Link's sworn brother, Darunia, was angered by the fact that the royal family would send a kid as a messenger. Even after Link cheers him up by playing Saria's song, Darunia tells Link to prove he's a real man by defeating the monsters in Dodongo Cavern. I'm sure many of us have heard something along these lines before, except for the Dodongo Cavern part. Hearing something like that would probably hurt anybody's pride, so Link did what many of us would have done. He set out as a kid to prove that he was a man. What Link didn't understand, though, is that this usually doesn't work out very well. Proving to yourself and to others that you're a real man is hard, and it's usually done out of pride instead of humility. However, it's easy to see why Link might feel the need to prove himself by overcoming these challenges set before him. By entering the Great Deku Tree, he wanted to prove to Mido that he can use a sword. Link carried Ruto through Jabu Jabu's belly to show her that he's helpful. He braved Dodongo Cavern to prove to Darunia that he really was a man. This constant feeling of wanting to prove himself and successfully doing so went a long way to making Link feel like he was starting to figure out the world. He was accomplishing great things by himself, or at least that's what he thought. In reality, Link was under the careful guidance of the adults in his life. As soon as Link stepped out into Hyrule Field for the first time, he was stopped dead in his tracks by none other than Kapora Gabora telling him exactly where Hyrule Castle was. Fun conversations with this definitely not annoying owl would be constant throughout the journey as a child. And of course, we can't forget about everybody's favorite character, Navi. Throughout the game, and especially during the child portion, she would give very strong hints telling Link exactly where to go. Of course, this would be very helpful for young players new to 3D gaming at the time. However, we're looking at this from a purely character perspective. And from a purely character perspective, this probably got pretty old. Like many of us when we were young, Link needed this guidance at the time. However, that doesn't mean it was wanted. The feeling of having your hand held by others when you think you got it figured out can be frustrating. Just ask anyone who's played Skyward Sword. This is a feeling many of us experience when we're young. You're constantly being told what to do, even though you think you know. Unfortunately for Link, like many of us already have, he would soon find out how little he actually knew. Imagine for a second that you're Link. You beat the odds, and you got the 3 spiritual stones. You're probably feeling pretty good. You just won. Ganondorf's going to prison, and now the only logical conclusion is that you and Zelda are going to get married. This is a big moment in the game. Link went from being an outcast in his hometown to proving himself to those who had been guiding him, and even to the haters. Once he brought those 3 stones to Zelda, no one would be able to question his bravery, or his courage, or even his manliness. Link thought he learned how to be a man. What Link was actually about to learn is that life has seasons. There are beautiful spring times where everything is warm, in bloom, and full of life. And then there are the winters where everything's cold, frozen, and dead. He was about to enter the cold, frozen, and dead one. As he approached Castletown, he saw the unexpected. Zelda and Impa were speeding out of the gate, with Ganondorf hot on their trail. Link, with his newly developed confidence, actually tried to fight Ganondorf. As you can see, it didn't go very well, which I'm sure we can all relate to. However, it didn't matter. Once Link set the stones on the altar in the Temple of Time, everything would be okay. Link didn't know what would happen, but he knew that he would be able to defeat Ganondorf. And he was right about this. However, it would take a while for him to be ready to do that. Even with the Master Sword, Link would have a lot to learn before he was ready to take on Dark Beast Ganon. There would be trials and tribulations, but through them, Link would finally grow into the responsibilities of a man. Link was now in the body of a man, perhaps a reflection of how he felt as he walked into the Temple of Time on that fateful day. Rauru told Link that Ganondorf had turned Hyrule into a world of monsters, but surely wouldn't be anything Link couldn't handle. After all, he was a man now. And then he stepped outside and saw the magnitude of what Ganondorf had done. It was like stepping into your grandmother's garden that was once beautiful and full of life, now just dead and full of rot. Castletown had become a place he was so familiar with, yet now it was full of death and in need of healing. Would Link truly be able to provide the healing the land needed? Mere minutes ago, he was just a young boy eager to defeat evil and go on an adventure. But now, seeing the world already destroyed and the streets full of the undead, he realized the true impacts of his pride. He had the responsibility of the world on his shoulders. As a boy, he was disillusioned by the need to prove himself a man, and perhaps for some time he thought he was one. However, standing there, looking like a man, witnessing the evil done by someone far more powerful than him, he'd never felt more like a boy. This was the unforgettable moment where Link learned that he didn't have everything figured out. There was still so much he needed to learn about the world and himself. Looking back on his adventure as a child, he realized he had turned away from the people who had respected him most. He ran away from his Goron brothers and was embarrassed by the young love Ruto showed him. He now realized both past and future relationships would be more important than ever. He needed to embrace the brotherhood he had with Darunia, appreciate the love that Ruto had for him, and share in mutual respect with the newly met Sheik. In the fight against Ganondorf, Link would need to rely on his friends, while taking on his newfound responsibility as the hero of time. Link would need to be responsible for his role in saving Hyrule. As a boy, he was often told exactly where to go and what to do. However, as a man, this changed, and the game reflects this. There were no more exciting conversations with Kippur Gabora, and Navi's hints just weren't very good anymore. Link had to rely on his strengths and sharpen his problem-solving skills as the road to each temple was getting more and more challenging. As reflected by the gameplay itself, knowing where to go was pretty easy, but figuring out how to get there was a whole other problem. There simply weren't as many people in Link's life to guide him and tell him what to do. When this happens, it exposes our weaknesses. However, like in Link's case, it can also showcase our strengths. The friends Link met as a child had their own strengths and their own part to play, so he needed to take on the responsibility of his part. As a child, Link only thought that he was doing things on his own, when in reality, he was under the guidance of those older than him. Now that he was truly on his own as a man, he realized that he needed his friends more than ever. He would need to be interdependent with them, being responsible for his own part while depending on others for where he's weak. It was through developing his own independence that he realized his need for his friends. As Robert said, Link must work with the sages to defeat Ganondorf. As a boy, Link tried to do things on his own to prove himself out of pride. As a man, Link needed to humble himself and do what he was responsible for. He had his own part to play, but for the rest, he needed to depend on his friends. During his journey through the 5 temples, Link would have to rely on the sages to make it through. These sages were, in fact, the friends he made along the way. Darunia helped Link by weakening Volvolgia. Sheik emphasized how him and Ruto defeated the monster in the Water Temple together. Impa even goes ahead of Link in the Shadow Temple to confront Bongo Bongo. While these actions may not be shown to the player, they emphasize to Link that he needs to rely on his friends to be successful. Sheik is perhaps the best example of Link's reliance on others. Before Link enters every temple, Sheik is there to teach him its song and give advice and encouragement. Sheik even watched over Link while he was knocked unconscious by Bongo Bongo. The relationship between Link and Sheik is emblematic of the point I'm trying to make. They're both responsible for their own parts to play in the world, yet they also have to rely on each other. Becoming a man means that you understand that you don't have all the answers. You can't do everything, but you do what you can and rely on others for what you can. Link learned this lesson through the events of Ocarina of Time, and I believe that we can learn from them as well. After graduating high school, it's common for many boys to feel like they've already become a man. It's easy to think at that point you have everything figured out. However, what we usually don't know is how much guidance we've been given and how little we actually know. For most of us, there comes a point in our lives where we find this to be true. For Link, it was the destruction of Hyrule. For us, it could be anything from the loss of a loved one, or even something we did that hurts someone we care about. It's at this point we can make a choice. Do we double down on our ways, trying to figure out life while pretending we have all the answers? Or do we take responsibility and humble ourselves like Link did, and realize we hardly know anything? Being a man isn't about being tough or doing things on your own all the time. It's about doing your part and relying on others for the rest. As a man, I want to be a leader for my family and work with my wife to create a stable home for our future kids. I want to show my wife that she is respected, valued, and loved. I want to have a close bond with other men that I can rely on. I want to be humble and be a servant to others. This is what I think being a man is all about. It's about taking responsibility, being a leader, and caring for my friends and family. This is the type of man that I think Link learned to be, and it's the type of man that I want to be. Thank you so much for watching. Do you disagree with my observations about Link? If so, let me hear about it, because I am very aware that I read way too much in Ocarina of Time, but that's okay. It was fun. If you enjoyed this video, you may enjoy my video about how Breath of the Wild teaches us to ask questions. Who knows? Maybe you'll want to watch the one I made about how even though I think Metroid Prime 2 is a better game, I still like Metroid Prime 1 better. So many options. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and see you next time.